channel. We're back for yet again another Pokemon Creepypasta. So today we're going to be reading Absol. And yeah, let's get right into it. I just want to clarify that Absol is one of my favorite Pokemon. So yeah, just, putting it out there. Absol is definitely one of my favorites, especially Mega Absol. I hate Absol. I hate them with a passion. Not because of what they are, but what they stand for. My whole life, I've been seeing them. It's actually just one. Every time I see it, someone I care about dies. I saw the Absol for the first time when I was only 6 years old. My mother and I were taking a walk in the woods near our house. It was a large forest and had all sorts of small Pokemon in it, from Seedot, Oddish, Zigzagoon, Talo, a Flupuchiana, and even the occasional Meryl. I love walking in those woods with my mother and seeing all the little creatures run about. My mother always brought her Linoon, Breeze, to walk alongside us in case we were ever attacked, but we never were. Breeze was a quiet, gentle creature, and very kind to me and my brother and my sister. She never got upset when we spilled juice on her, or bit us when we might have pulled her fur by accident. She was always calm and relaxed. That day when we were walking through the woods, everything was still and quiet. We hadn't seen any of the usual Pokemon. All of a sudden, Breeze curled up into a tiny ball and started growling and whimpering, pure fear shining in her bright blue eyes. "What's wrong, Breeze?" my mother asked, trying to soothe the rattle-eyed Noon. I followed where Breeze's eyes were pointing, and it was then I saw it. Perched on a log, directly in the center of a sun-dappled clearing, was an Absol. I didn't know what it was at the time. It looked lighter than air, like the slightest wind might blow it over. It was on its toes, ready to spring up and flee at any moment. My mouth hung open in awe of the strange and beautiful creature. My mother didn't see it. She was too occupied with trying to pacify Breeze. I suddenly snapped out of my stupor. "Mama! Mama! A Pokemon! Big white one, Mama!" I hollered. My mother sat up. "Where?" I turned around again, pointing my pudgy finger at the clearing. "Right over there. Where'd it go?" The creature had gone. Breeze stood up again, barking at the spot where I'd been pointing, before tearing off into the woods. "Breeze, no, wait!" Mother cried, before sighing. The Linoon was gone. "What did the Pokemon look like, Mickey?" "It was big and white and fluffy. It had black claws, a black tail, and a black horn on its head to match." My mother's hand flew to her mouth and her eyes widened. "Honey, that was an Absol. We have to go home and call your father." "But, Breeze—" "No buts. Breeze is smart. She can find her own way home. We have to go now." Shocked by my mother's abruptness, I meekly let her drag me home by my arm. I didn't know what was going on, but if it had anything to do with my father, it had to be important. My father traveled most of the time and wasn't home very often, but always bought us the nicest of gifts when he found time to come home to his family. Soon we were home. My mother raced to the phone, her fingers flying over the buttons as she dialed the numbers. She was almost completely silent for several long minutes, her ear pressed to the phone with her sounds being grunts and a few words here and there. Then suddenly, she began to sob. Young as I was, I knew something was wrong. Even as she hung up the phone, trying to contain herself. "Mama, what happened to Daddy?" My mother looked up, her eyes red before hugging me and beginning to sob again. It was then that I knew that my father was never coming back. My father had been in Lily Cove City, staying at the hotel there. He had been there to visit Mr. Pyre and catch some Pokemon indigenous to that area, as well as check out the safari some. However, one night he decided to go for a cruise. The captain on the boat was drunk and ran his ship up in the rocks, and there were no survivors. All we had to remember my father by was his mighty Anna Grimm, who he had left in his hotel room, and a gift that he had been going to bring back for me. He had caught me my very own Pokemon, a beautiful female Vulpix he'd captured on Mount Pyre. I named her Foxfire. It was finally amazing to have my own Pokemon. My brother Alex, who's 3 years older than me, had his Electric Jolt, and my sister Ava, who's 2 years younger than me, had her Skitty Blush. And now I finally had my own Pokemon, and I felt that in her, in my precious Firefox, a tiny piece of my father lived on. The second time I saw the Absol was 2 years later when I was 8. I was playing in the backyard with my sister and our Pokemon. Our brother's in the front yard with his Manectric. He'd been asked to keep to the other side of the house because he was training his Pokemon, and Jolt was a good bit stronger than either of our Pokemon. I remember it quite clearly. We were all dressed up in eye patches and bandanas and fake pig legs, even our Pokemon, and we were all pretending to be pirates searching for our buried treasure. We were made believing that the occasional bolts of lightning danced away from the front lawn were an approaching store, a typical child's game. I was supervising as my loyal Firefox swapped the deck with her tail when I chanced to look up. Straight ahead of me, not more than 20 feet away, was the Absol. It was the same one from all those years ago. I didn't know how I knew, but I did. My Vulpix, noticing I had stopped giving orders, looked up to see what it was I was staring at. She saw it too. The beast gave a low, guttural growl of its own name, and suddenly we heard a blood-curdling scream from the front yard, accompanied by a shock of lightning. The Absol fled into the woods. Without missing a beat, I turned to my sister. Eva, quickly, go get Mama. I'll check on Alex. She nodded dumbly and ran inside the house, and in seconds I was in the front yard. Firefox at my side. The sight I was met with a grim one. My brother was pinned under a fallen tree, screaming and trying to struggle away as Jolt vainly tried to lift the wooden collar off his broken body. Firefox, go help Jolt, I cried. She immediately obeyed, and I ran to my brother to see if I could get him to calm down. As I was doing so, the efforts of my Vulpix and his Manetric were joined by the strength of Breeze and Grim. Yes, Breeze came home that night. She was injured and shaky and almost fainted, but she was alive. Mother and sister followed, joining us in the front yard. In minutes we had the tree off him, mainly thanks to Grim's strength. The hospital was called, and Alex was taken away. It didn't look good. 8 broken ribs, fractured collarbone, and his spine and neck were both badly cracked, and both of his legs and hips were shattered. Apparently, while my brother had been training, he had failed to notice the lightning rod embedded in one of the trees. One of Jolt's attacks had been pulled to it, and the old tree was too weak to remain standing and fell on Alex. The doctors couldn't save him. One of his ribs had punctured his lung, and they couldn't fix him in time to prevent him from drowning in his own blood. He died in the hospital that very night. I had lost my father, and then just 2 years later, my beloved older brother was taken from me. I was there when he died, and I stayed at his bedside until the very end, and I can remember his last words. You know, it's sad, Mickey. I always thought I'd be a gym leader. For a long time, my mother, my sister, and my dear little Vulpix were my only comfort. I frequently cried myself to sleep while holding Foxfire in my arms. I decided to call Absol Reaper. It seemed an appropriate name for the herald of death. It was another year before Reaper brought his unwelcome presence back into my life. My sister had just left on the school bus. I wasn't going to school that day. I wasn't feeling well, but I can still remember the picture of her smiling and boarding that bus and her skitty peeking out of their backpack. I was watching the vehicle disappear down the road, waving all the way, and then suddenly, Reaper was there. He was sitting on a rock across the street, watching me. I blinked, and my arm froze in midair, and my blue and gray blanket still clutched tightly around my shoulders. Suddenly, the ground was rocked by a huge explosion. I whipped my head around, staring at the bus. The entire vehicle was up in flames, a mushroom cloud of smoke billowing up from it. I dropped my blanket and began to run down the road, hoping to see my sister if anyone else was okay. Save them if I had to. I had my fire-type Pokemon, and I was used to a burn or two. I was still quite far away when there was a second explosion. This one knocked me off my feet. I fell to the ground crying, covered in dust, and too shocked and upset to get up. Even though I was only 9, I knew that no one could have survived that explosion. I looked back towards the house, trying to see if my mother was coming, but the only thing my mind could register was that Reaper was gone again. The fire department was called. The street was filled with firemen for the next 2 hours. Everyone in the bus was killed, as I had thought. Over the next week or two, we gathered bits and pieces of information. It was almost a whole month before the town had figured out what happened. One of the high school jocks, wanting to look cool, had bought a Voltorb on the bus, and his sibling had seen him sneak it inside his backpack as he left the house. But for a long time, he was too scared to say anything. After he had snuck the volatile Pokemon on the bus, him and his friends started taunting it, thinking it was funny. The creature became angry and used its signature move, self-destruct, and that was the first explosion. The second explosion was the flames reaching the gas tank. My sister and many of my friends had been killed, and the event scarred the whole town. No one really talked about it, but there was a silent recognition that hung in the air for months, sharing the hurt of the fact that most of us had lost a friend, relative in that tragedy. I became a very solemn child, almost as sorrowful as my mother. I was in great pain, but I can't even imagine what it was like for her, losing her husband and not all but one of her children in the short 3 years. My darling Foxfire was my only joy left. She was so sweet, always trying her hardest to cheer me up and make me laugh. I never did laugh. I was hurting too badly for that, but I made sure that she knew I appreciated her trying. For 3 years, I was solemn. For 3 years, Foxfire did her best to bring me joy. And for 3 years, I felt peace. A grim, ugly, empty kind of peace. A peace full of finality, and a kind of feeling you get when you have just had a victory, but at a cost. But 3 years of peace nonetheless. For 3 years, I thought that death was over. But for 3 years, I was dead wrong. The day was overcast and gloomy. It was perfectly suited my mood. Earlier, I'd found a box of my siblings' things, so my head was clouded with the sorrow of their death. I was walking through the backyard, hoping the fresh air would clear my head a little. Foxfire was trying to cheer me up as usual. She was doing something particularly funny. She had found an old hat and scarf of my mother's and was strutting around wearing them like she was a supermodel. It was so cute, and she looked so funny. She was trying so hard for me that for the first time in years, I almost felt happy. As I walked by the well, she jumped up on its edge and began to saunter around on two legs, pretending it was a catwalk. She looked so comical doing that, and that the edges of my face seemed to crack a little as I finally gave a pained smile. My eyes were watering with the borderline of what were almost like tears, but I was ever so slightly smiling. And then I saw him. Two burning red eyes peeking out from the trees surrounding the lawn. It was Reaper. Suddenly, Foxfire began to stumble. She had slipped onto the wet patch of moss on the well's edge, and I realized what was about to happen and dove for her. Foxfire, no! I was half a second too late, and my fingers just brushing her tail as she disappeared down the well, hitting the water 10 feet below the splash. I reacted instantly and dropping the bucket down. Foxfire, grab the bucket, get him! I felt the end of the rope gain weight, and then it was gone for a split second before returning. Then it was gone again, and it was a full minute before there was a consistent weight present in the bucket below. But as soon as there was, the splashing was gone. Panic took control as I pulled the bucket back up as fast as I could. In lay my Vulpix, waterlogged and barely breathing. She was a fire type. She couldn't handle being in the water that long. That and the heavy liquid filling her lungs was killing her quickly. My Foxfire, my precious Pokemon, was dying. I hoisted her out of the bucket, sobbing as I held her tightly to my chest. Foxfire, please, no, please don't leave me. I need you. You're all I've got left, I begged. Her eyes opened just slightly, looking at me. Please, Foxfire, you can't die. As soon as I finish school, you and me, we're going to go everywhere together. Please, don't go. You can't. I love you. I sobbed, holding her tighter as if it would keep life in her body. She smiled at me weakly, and her eyes slid shut again, and her small chest heaved one more time, and then she was gone. And I broke down. Foxfire was all I had left, and now she was gone too. Through my pain and through the endless tears running down my cheeks, I noticed one thing. The red eyes that had appeared between the trees had disappeared. We buried her in the backyard, and I saw to it that she got a good funeral, just as any person would have gotten. I brought her flowers, roses to be exact, lots of them. They were her favorite. My mother and I lit all sorts of candles, and we read from the Bible as we lowered her into the hole that Brace had made with Dig. After that, I lost myself. I stole hundreds of packets of cigarettes, and I lost track of my days. My life dissolved into hours upon hours of chain-smoking cigarette after cigarette. I knew that weak lungs ran in my family, but I didn't care that I was killing myself. I had nothing left to live for, and it didn't matter to me if I died of old age or died locked in a smoky, cigarette-butt-covered bedroom. Now I'm 13. I'm confined to bed with severe lung cancer. I knew this would happen, but I didn't care. I still don't. My mother doesn't care either. She hasn't been right in the head since my sister died. She probably won't even notice I'm gone, and if she does, I can only hope she'll respect my wish to die. It hurts to think, hurts to talk, and it hurts to breathe. I'm almost too weak to type this, but I type it because I don't think I'll be here much longer, and I wanted someone to find this, just because I want someone out there to know. I've been refusing the treatment, and the doctors aren't sure how long I have left, but now I know I have very little time. Why? Because Reaper just appeared outside my window, and he's staring straight at me. Good Lord, that's fucking depressing. I adore Absol more than anything, but I hate the reputation that it has because it's known as like the destruction. Kind of like the same with Yveltal, that it's like they're both considered like dangerous and destructive Pokemon. When all I do when it comes to like villains and like bad people or bad like creatures is that they're all just misunderstood. But yeah, that fucking sucks. Absol is like one of my favorite Pokemon too, so that would just suck is that every time you saw it, like someone in your family fucking died. Bro, I had a big fucking family. That'd be too long to fucking kill them all off one by one. My family's fucking huge. Anyways, that is it for this one, and I hope you all enjoyed. If you're new to my channel, I appreciate it. Hit the subscribe button, give me a thumbs up, and hit the bell so you're notified when videos, which is every Wednesday. I love you guys, and I'll see you later.